Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists. Welcome back. We are visiting here our general adaptation syndrome, which is abbreviated as GAS or GAS, which I think is super appropriate for our stress response. When we talk about our general adaptation syndrome, we do have three distinct phases. And so the first immediate phase is our alarm phase. And here, this is going to be coordinated by our sympathetic nervous system. So this is very much the fight, the flight, or the freeze response. So this is a short term. This is dominated by our epinephrine and our norepinephrine. And we will see epinephrine released 4 times as much as the norepinephrine. So epinephrine is very much dominating this response. And what we're going to see happening here is an increase in our heart rate, an increase in our blood pressure, an increase in our airways, right? We're going to get all the blood flow to our extremities, right? So we're redirecting that blood flow away from our internal organs to our extremities. And we're going to see a release of our stored energy. So we're going to get a breakdown of glycogen to release glucose into the bloodstream. And we'll also get that process of lipolysis occurring, which remember is the breakdown of triglycerides into those fatty acids. Now, if that alarm phase continues for, let's say, greater than a few hours, so if our alarm phase continues for greater than a few hours, we move into what's called the resistance phase. And this is where our body is like adapting to stress as like, okay, stress is our basic operating procedure, right? And so now we're seeing more of like a long-term coordination. So this is really where the endocrine system is going to really take over. We get the release of our glucocorticoids. Remember, we had cortisol as an example there. We get the release of our growth hormone. We see again the release of epinephrine. Remember, we have the permissive effects between the thyroxines and that epinephrine. So we get the release of the T3 and the T4 as well. When we say we're adapting to stress, maybe we get this idea that a person who's not getting enough nutrients, a person who's starving, might get this signal for their GI tract to begin to like maximize nutrient absorption so that any food as it comes through is being absorbed more. We're getting here what we can think of as long-term glucose sparing activities. Glucose sparing is where we're basically telling ourselves to switch from using glucose to using fatty acids for ATP production. And so this does mean we're going to get high levels of fatty acids moving through the bloodstream. We're going to actually have quite a lot of blood glucose because our regular cells are not using the glucose. Instead, we see our regular cells using fatty acids, and yet our glycogen is being broken down to make more glucose. So when we're talking about the long-term glucose sparing activities, we're going to get a release of fatty acids into the bloodstream. We're going to see an increase in blood glucose levels. We're going to see water and sodium retention. And we're going to see a loss of both potassium ion and hydrogen ion. So we're potentially going to see an imbalance with our electrolytes. We're going to see potentially an imbalance with our pH. Having that elevated blood glucose level can cause damage to our cardiovascular system. And so we're seeing that as this resistance phase continues, we can get to what's called the exhaustion phase. And the trigger between like when are we in resistance and when are we in exhaustion is when we run out of our lipid reserves. So this is where an individual who has a more lipid reserves can actually exist in this resistance phase longer than a person with less lipid reserve. And in the case of our exhaustion, we're getting an actual depression. We're getting a reduction in our immune response. We're seeing severe fatigue. We're going to see organ decline, right? Essentially, we're getting a homeostatic regulation breakdown. And so ultimately, this can lead to organ damage and organ failure. We see like dominating the exhaustion are the glucocorticoids, specifically that cortisol. So we've mentioned that as like our stress hormone, again, coming from the adrenal cortex. And so this is that sort of idea that most stress can literally kill, right? Because you're wearing out your body through that resistance phase until everything is essentially exhausted. All right, stay tuned for our next endocrine gland. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other.